My best friend's boyfriend tried to catfish me as his GF and get in my pants, but I instantly knew it wasn't her and said, "Is this George?" I, 36M, have a childhood friend, Emily, 36F, whom I've known since we were 5. We originally met because our respective fathers were both German and living in the UK, having married British women. They became friends, and we were basically raised as siblings. Nothing remotely romantic has ever happened between us, and it's accurate to say I treat her like I do my other sisters. People struggle at times to believe nothing has happened between us, but is it so insane for someone with 3 sisters to treat a childhood friend as a 4th? We stopped being friends briefly when she got married way too young to her boss. He ended up being incredibly abusive, controlling her life at every level, and over the 3 years they were together, he basically isolated her from all friends and family. We reconciled when she divorced him. Around this time, I attended university and met my now wife early on. We were assigned to the same floor in halls. We've been together for 17 years now, and she's become really close to Emily over the years. Also at university, I met a guy, George, 36M, on my course. We were part of the same friendship group but didn't stay in touch until we coincidentally ended up working together a good 10 years after graduation. I ended up introducing him to Emily, and they started a relationship. A year or so later, they moved in together. Emily was happy, he was happy, and on the face of things, he seemed fine with me and Emily's friendship and never said anything. Over the past few weeks, I started getting texts from her, sometimes late at night, that were just, well, odd. I was suspicious when she used a common British shortening of my full name rather than the traditional German version our respective fathers and she would always use. When some overly flirty, almost outright dirty texting occurred, I immediately shut it down, 100% sure it wasn't her. I basically called him out and asked if this was, in fact, George using her phone and bluntly asked why he was trying to dirty text with me as his girlfriend. He never responded, but after explaining the situation to my wife, she went over to Emily's with my phone to see what was going on. I wasn't there for this, but she showed Emily our entire text history and what he had done. George came home, and they confronted him. He first outright denied it and had the audacity to accuse Emily of dirty texting me and trying to hide said cheating from my wife by saying he did it. Emily just left with my wife to come stay with us after this because there wasn't any reasoning with him. The morning after, he called and begged her to come home. He was crying and threw himself at her feet, claiming he did it out of jealousy. He highlighted that she was in the habit of deleting our conversations, which drove him mad, an apparent choice she makes for all her texts with everyone, not just me by the way, and he was always jealous of our relationship. He found it hard to see me with her, and after he saw her saying stuff like how she loved me, again, as siblings, not being able to read our texts drove him to basically go fishing to establish our relationship. The dirty texting was an attempt to bluntly see if it was something we, or more specifically I, would engage in. At this point, Emily asked for mine and my wife's opinion on this whole thing. I called BS on this being a mistake. Something he was driven to by jealousy? He violated her privacy by going through her phone, risked our friendship by masquerading as her, risked my marriage by trying to bait me into dirty texting a friend, risked Emily and my wife's friendship by making it look like Emily was dirty texting me. The entire thing was a clusterflop. I didn't outright say she should leave him, but I highlighted how dishonest this whole thing was. She eventually went back home, and I didn't hear anything for a few days, but Emily eventually revealed to my wife that she had functionally forgiven him. My wife worked out from the conversation what had happened. He had basically flipped the script on me by playing into fears from her marriage. He described me as another controlling male trying to dictate who she had a relationship with. He encouraged her to make her own decision, not bad advice in theory, but she had to ignore me because I didn't have her best interest at heart. I was controlling her like her ex. My wife quietly pointed out he was, in fact, being like her ex, not me. He was driving a wedge between her and family. At this point, Emily just gave up. She said she couldn't win, couldn't decide between the man she loves and her brother, so screw it. Let's pretend it never happened. We haven't really spoken since. Apparently, part of forgetting this ever happened is also giving in to his worries about our friendship. Every time I try to bring up what he did, I've either been ignored or told to stay out of it. Honestly, this pisses me off that he's gotten exactly what he wanted. He's stopped us from talking. I know I can't force her to break up with him, but it seems like a catch-22. I can't push her to make a decision about what he did while he's got her convinced I'm controlling her. I rarely see George at work, and he's rightly kept the hell away from me. I was tempted to bring my sisters into this clusterflop, tell them what happened, as they love her like a sister too, and see if they can talk some sense into Emily, but that's somewhat manipulative too. So any advice here? Let crappy sleeping dogs lie? Try to get her to deal with what he did rather than sweeping it under the rug? Update 1. I thought I'd update on my post, as there was a partial resolution and the advice was good. So, I followed the general advice of just leaving the entire situation alone. I agree that any interference from me or my family would be manipulative and controlling, albeit well-meaning. So, I haven't really spoken to Emily since slightly before Christmas, but her mother contacted me a little after New Year to ask if I knew what was going on with her. Emily's cousin back in Germany had contacted her mother, saying she had turned up on her doorstep having flown in from the UK on the 4th after apparently breaking up with George. According to her mother, Emily had come back to our hometown for the holidays. She brought George, and at some point they ran into her ex-husband at the pub. For context, we grew up in a tiny village in the middle of nowhere. There's literally nothing to our village but a pub, a post office, and a small supermarket. Her ex still lives where we grew up. So, this is all information relayed to me via Emily's mother, but apparently at some point George approached Emily's ex-husband and asked for some advice. George is familiar with the story of their relationship and knows how controlling he was, and why they divorced. Somewhat to her ex-husband's credit, he apparently refused to answer any questions and quietly approached Emily's mother to relay what he had been asked. Now, this is according to him, and George denies it, but he said George asked him how to handle me in terms of my friendship with Emily. I've no idea what Emily's ex-husband's motivation was here, but they've been divorced for a decade now, and he hasn't contacted her in this time, so I'm inclined to believe it wasn't further attempts at interfering with her life. Maybe it was actually manipulation. Maybe in the decade since they've divorced he's become a better man, who knows? We're all inclined to believe that is what was asked, despite George denying it, because how else would her ex-husband know he had an issue with me recently? He isn't in contact with anyone who would know about the recent issues. Also, to be honest, the ex never had an issue with me. He saw me as a child, despite being the same age as his then wife, and constantly called me kiddo and asked how school was. It would be a very specific shot in the dark on his part to assume George had an issue with me without George saying so himself. So, her mother told Emily what George had tried to do and pointed out that her boyfriend is now trying to emulate her ex-husband's behavior and encouraged her to confront him over this and also what happened over the last month rather than ignoring it. Nobody was privy to the discussion they had, but he left sometime after it to return to their shared home and she stayed with her mother, saying they had broken up. She stayed with her mother until the day after when she, without any warning, left for Germany. The cousin she's staying with assures us she's relatively fine. She's just overwhelmed and embarrassed she let this happen again. She couldn't handle being where she might run into either ex, so staying with her mother was off the table, and she just ran somewhere far but safe. I still haven't spoken to Emily. I've sent her a message with condolences and reassurance that she will always have a home here in the UK, and I've decided to continue giving her space while making it clear I am there for her. She hasn't responded, but I assume this is just out of awkwardness over what happened and how technically George was once my friend. He hasn't spoken to me either, and I haven't seen him at work at all. So yeah, not a happy ending per se. It shouldn't have taken her abusive ex getting involved for a resolution, but as people predicted, George was being abusive and he would repeat that behavior. I suppose it was relatively painless that he showed his true colors so emphatically without much further abuse. This could have dragged on. Thanks for the advice. Me staying out of it didn't make this any easier for her, but it probably avoided making it worse. Update 2. I jumped the horse a little with the previous update, and looking back, I hadn't actually spoken to Emily, and it was all secondhand information. Given this whole thing has now been entirely sorted in the 3 months since it happened, I thought I'd actually give an actual full resolution. So, Emily came back to the UK just before the country was locked down and moved in with us, reluctantly. We grabbed some drinks and played Divinity 2 while we hashed out exactly what went down from her perspective. I apologized for going behind her back and speaking to her mother about it all. Situations like this are never helped by information being relayed through other people, and I asked if she wanted to go through it all from start to finish. Basically, she buried her head in the sand the day she found out he had been trying to dirty text me as her. It was just too much. She couldn't win. She either lost the man she loved and the lifestyle she had, or lost her brother. I assured her she'd never lose me, but she revealed she low-key hated the fact she let herself be taken advantage of like this twice and couldn't face me, having not listened to my advice. She also mentioned that breaking up with him would inevitably land her on my doorstep for support, and that made her feel bad also, hence escaping to Germany and not talking to me about this. This went deeper, and she opened up about her insecurities, how she regretted never going to university, instead marrying her abusive ex-husband, and how she feels like an accessory to other people's happiness. She saw me and my wife, a power couple, as she put it, and just felt so small by comparison. She did love George, but leaving him would leave her with functionally nothing again, and she couldn't handle that. We talked about this a lot. I revealed I was aware my support of her could be a problem. I was feeling like I had made their relationship awkward by being so involved in her life. It might have been hard for George to feel like her boyfriend while I was there picking up her tabs, doing the DIY, and basically acting like a father coddling his child. I asked if my, with retrospect, financial support of her tied into this feeling of inadequacy, like I was dragging her along for my ride, and she said it was a problem. She felt trapped when the relationship ended because she had no independence or true control. While I would never use my position to control her, she would still be living by someone else's good graces. She felt she needed to stand on her own 2 feet, be her own woman rather than relying on a man, no matter how much she loved and trusted him. That way her decisions would be her own, rather than under some level of duress. In the same way a child wants independence from her parents, she feels she finally needs independence from me. So, we came up with a game plan. Now, the lockdown has obviously made this harder. She is still living with me and my wife currently, but the plan is she's going to go back into education. She was capable of attending university, she had the qualifications but decided not to due to marriage. My financial security was really born of an inheritance I had after my father passed away. I used it to not have to worry about rent during my extended time in education and early career, as I bought a small flat with it that I still own. I've decided to pay it forward and put her in a similar situation by letting her use my flat, which is currently unoccupied because it's only been rented to students due to its proximity to 2 universities. Yes, this is me financially supporting her, but in a strictly limited way. No more covering errant bills, paying for holidays, or footing the bill when we socialize. She will not pay rent, but she will cover all bills on the flat and she moves out the moment she's in work. She didn't love the idea of me owning her home, but I called it my last act as that guy in her life, the pseudo-brother/father/best friend. After this, we'll just be independent siblings/best friends. She will be moving soon. We'll need her room after all since my wife is now 5 months pregnant. Turns out she's been pregnant since late December and all this started. As for George, he swears up and down he never asked the ex-husband to handle me. He claims he asked how to be fine with me. It wasn't seeking advice on how to deal with me, it was seeking advice on how to be fine with me the way her ex-husband was. Could be true, who knows? It's ultimately irrelevant. Though we recently found out George moved a girlfriend into the house he and Emily used to share, and here's the kicker, it's a longtime friend. Emily is fairly certain he never cheated on her, but she laughed out loud when she found out he's romantically living together with a longtime friend 3 months after the breakup. The dude's insecurity was likely born of his own feelings for a friend. He was getting close with a girl he was friends with, so he projected that onto me and Emily.